Okay, we're recording now. I'm recording my big football clinic talk for you guys. I said I'd love to be in Newport hanging out, but doing it from home. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully we can get this thing going. So let's just click here. Need to get the slideshow play from start. You look ready to go. So actually calling this Speed for Football totally new approach because for me this really is a completely new approach. The nice thing about strength and conditioning is that we're always learning, we're always figuring things out, we're always trying to make our program better. So what we're going to try to help you guys do is make your speed program for football better, or maybe just give you a speed program for football. This is where you can contact me. So if you're looking to talk, strengthcoach.com is the way to go. So that information is there for you. A couple of thank yous. These are guys that have really influenced me. Tony Holler, late Charlie Francis, Chris Corfus, Dan Paff, Stuart McMillan, Andreas Bain, JB Marin, Ken Clark, Cam Joss, Steve Bunker, so many other people who kind of helped me come to these conclusions. The Charlie Francis training system. If you're into speed, get the book. It's an amazing book. It was written probably in the 90s, and it is still one of the best speed development books that's out there, but we won't spend too much time on that. In the football world, I've always been a speed guy. If you've followed my career at all, I've had really good performance at the NFL Combine. Some guys, like I said, Mike Mamula, who ended up showing up on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and guys like Eric Swan, if you really want to go back into the 80s, who was one of the first non-college players ever to get drafted. So I've been doing this for a long time. And the cool thing is I keep learning and things keep getting better. Pete Williams in this book actually gives me credit for inventing combine training. I don't know if I invented it, but I was clearly one of the first people to do it. So I've been messing with these ideas for a really long time. Actually, in my case, I'm 61. It's been 40 years of coaching. I started at 21 right out of Springfield College, and I've been doing it pretty much every day since then. So we need to understand speed before we start. And it's really simple. The race is from A to B. The person who gets to B is the fastest. There's no style points. It's just a race. And I always like to say this: fast and pretty fast. I think we spend way too much time messing around trying to make guys look like better runners, but not making guys better runners. And that's going to really be the focus of what we're going to talk about today. The other thing, and it's amazing, I just read something this morning where some football coach said, oh, football speed and track speed is different, and some people have better game speed. That's all bullshit. Fast people are fast. The fastest people, if we're timing from A to B, are the fastest people. So stop trying to convince yourself that that stuff matters. This is just an interesting thing to look at, though. When you think about speed, yeah, speed matters. But if you look at this list of guys right here, obviously I should have probably blown it up a little bit bigger. Champ Bailey's probably the only name you're going to recognize. Other people said, Marquise Goodwin had, a decent career. There was another guy, I can't think of his name, who was a world-class long jumper. But the point is, only 21 players have run a 4.3 or better at the NFL Combine, and the vast majority of those guys were not impact players in the NFL. So that's just something to keep in the back of your head too, because you still got to be good at football. The important thing for me, obviously, people, I love my obscure old person references, but the Fonz, if you were a Happy Days fan when you were a kid, if you're somebody who's in my age bracket, couldn't say that he was wrong. I'm telling you right now, I was wrong. I was wrong about speed development, and I'm going to outline for you why I was wrong and why this needs to be different. What was I wrong about? One, I thought all sprints were sprints, and we'll get into that. I thought timing was expensive and time consuming. And I also thought people got hurt sprinting. So I think I was a little bit afraid too. But this guy showed up, which is great. Tony Holler. And I love this Buddhist quote: when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So Tony wrote an article called Record, Rank, and Publish, which I read. And Tony is he's retired now, but same age as me, 61 years old. And it looks like me, surprisingly. I'm sure if you're looking at me in the right-hand corner of your screen and you're looking at Tony, you're thinking these guys look alike. Retired high school track coach who really has become a speed guru and now is really moving into the football world through something called TFC, Track Football Consortium, where they try to bring the track and football people together for educational opportunities. But The big thing that the article talked about was like, how do I get fast? Well, you want to get fast, you got to run fast. How fast should I run? As fast as you can. But the big thing is, how will I know if it's fast? You have to time it. The biggest investment you have to make, and we talked about this, I think 2 years ago at the clinic. Um, you got to invest in a time. You got to invest. I'm a Brower guy, but I think you go to perform better, you buy a Brower timer, and you're off to the races. This is Steve Bunker. Steve has been a strength and conditioning coach with us at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning for more than 20 years. And I love to throw this slide in because I just want to say to people, Steve was right. Steve was a timed 10 guy. We need to be doing time 10s. We need to be doing time 10s. He was listening to guys like Tony and Chris Korfis long before I was. And he was right. I was wrong. So just put that in there, that little tidbit. Because this is the reality. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And, you look at someone like me, it would be really easy at 61 years old, 40 years of coaching in, to be set in my ways and to say, hey, this is the way we've always done it. And it's worked, as opposed to looking for ways to get better. We are always looking for ways to get better. And the good thing for me is, well, it's year 38. It's actually year 40 now. I'm still having epiphanies. I'm still looking at this and going, wow, when I did this presentation first, I called it sitting at the train station waiting for my ship to come in, because I was completely wrong. I was in the wrong place, wrong thought. So I'm hoping that you're going to benefit from my thoughts here as we go along, because, and I love this Henry Ford quote, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Anytime that you're going to innovate, you have to do something that other people are not doing. And this is the thing to think about. If you don't time, do you even do speed work? And my contention is that you don't. If you don't time, at least a percentage of your guys are not doing speed work anytime you attempt to do speed work. Because I used to think we did speed work almost every day because we ran sprints. But the reality was, did we really run sprints? Because if we look at this, are all sprints? If you talk to track coaches say, for it to be a sprint, it needs to be 90% of your maximum speed or above, which means if you've got a guy who can run 1.1 seconds for a fly 10, and we'll talk about flying 10, imagine timing a 10-yard segment and giving the athlete a run up of a certain distance. It could be 5-yard fly in, 10-yard fly in, 15-yard fly in, 20-yard fly in, but you're always timing 10. But let's just say if you run a 1-1, 1-2-1 is no longer a sprint. It is below 90%. It is in the 80s. And that's, I think, a big failing, was if we don't know how fast guys are, we can't know if they're sprinting. So truth be told, I think we rarely ran sprints, but we ran a lot. We ran almost every day, but I'm not sure how many of those runs were actually sprints. Just a word to the wise. I call this dumb football stuff. One is the fascination with the 40. I get it. 40, that's, how the NFL measures things, but I should explain the 40-yard dash thing is really it. I tried to look up in the fall, where did this come from? And it turns out, I think it was Paul Brown with the Cleveland Browns, and he had realized that punts went about 40 yards, and the best way to figure out who were the best punt coverage guys was to time them over that distance. So there's no magic to the 40-yard dash. So don't get caught up in the 40. I'm going to tell you, get caught up in the 10, because the 10 is going to be safe and easy, and you're not going to get people hurt, and you'll be happier. Your athletes will be happier. You can sprint far more often. So give up your fascination with the 40. Don't do sprints at the end of practice. Don't do sprints as conditioning. Don't ask kids to race. If you want to get people hurt, encourage competition. And football coaches are always like, what do you mean don't encourage competition? It's all about competition. It is not about competition in sprinting, because it increases the probability that someone is going to get injured. We are going to tell you all of the time, when you're timing, time your kids against themselves. Don't encourage them to compete. Don't do it at the end of practice. Don't say things like the winner gets to sit out. I used to, years ago, I had some friends at a local college who said we had a really big rash of hamstring injuries. And I said, I'm going to tell you what you guys are doing, and then you tell me if I'm wrong. I said, you're running sprints at the end of practice, and you're letting guys, the winner sits out, and the assistant coach who had called me was like, that's exactly what we're doing. I said, well, if you asked me to create a system to produce hamstring injury, that's exactly what I would do. So don't do that, please. And don't do sprints as conditioning. Sprints are not conditioning. Conditioning by its nature is submaximal. And again, the football coach is going to be like, what are you talking about? It's got to be 100%. No, it doesn't. You got to get over that stuff. You've got to get over this effort-based thought process that's holding you back and getting your guys hurt. And this is the thing with football. I love this, right? My guys, I want to get my big guys bigger and my skilled guys faster. And I used to always look at people and say, why? Don't you want your big guys faster too? If we look at the guys that get drafted in the NFL draft, the guys that get drafted, the big guys that get drafted can all run. So for me, I want to get my big guys, bigger, maybe, but I want to get everybody faster. That's what's important to me. But this is what's really important. The real key. You need to figure out what we would call sprint momentum. This is a Brian Mann formula. Brian is a incredibly intelligent guy, great researcher. But basically what you do is you multiply body weight in kilograms times 10-yard time in meters per second. So basically body weight divided by 2.2 times 9.14 divided by 10-yard time. You want to have this number because in football, yes, size matters. But if we have size increases and sprint momentum decreases, that means someone is getting bigger and slower. That is a problem. I am fine with somebody getting bigger and maintaining their speed. I do not want people getting bigger and getting slower. But if they do get slower, I would like this sprint momentum number to be going up. I can give you a perfect example. My son has gone from about 130 to 175 pounds. His best 10-yard dash time is a 1.12. He's currently running about a 1.16. He is slightly slower than he was before, but his sprint momentum, so basically his ability to create a collision, is significantly higher. And this is the next most important part for football coaches, right? People always go, well, I don't know, where am I going to do it? What am I going to do? Do the best you can with what you have where you are. This is out in the back of our place. We just added turf. So we're, if you look at Jimmy's down here at the end. He's on a little piece of turf that we added. We put turf through a little run. Well, actually, you'll see it. I'll just click this so you can see. But this is our 10-yard dash timing area. This is a 15-yard fly 10. So we're timing 10 yards and we're giving them a 15-yard run. And so they're running 25 yards. We're timing 10. We're always timing 10 regardless of the distance. But the point is, it's out in the back, it's in the parking lot, but it's allows us to get our speed work done. That's what you got to think about. Find a place where you can get your speed work done. Because, and I love this, Occam's razor, the simplest solution is often the best solution. In philosophy, a razor is a principle or rule of thumb that allows one to eliminate, so shave off unlikely explanations for a phenomenon or to avoid unnecessary actions. The simplest solution is the best solution. Find a place to time and time. Ideally, you need, in a perfect world, if you have 40 yards, you're in a great spot. 50, even better. 60, even better. But you don't need to be able to run 40s. Just keep thinking about that fly 10 idea, and we'll go through the kind of the why of that as we go along here. This is another one. This is where we're doing it inside. So basically, we've got 80 feet here. So we got a 10-yard fly 10 basically going into a crash pad on the other end. And again, every kid's getting a time. We're shouting times out. We're trying to figure out where can we do speed work? How can we set it up? If you look at here, we've got construction barriers. We're setting up a lane so people don't walk across, so people don't crash. We find a way to get it done. This is up at UMass Lowell. This is Devin McConnell, who's now with the Arizona Coyotes. I apologize. But same idea. He wanted to get his guys. They have a small weight room. They're just doing a 10. They're not even a fly 10, but they're doing a hand start 10 with their Brower timer. So the point is that you do what you can where you are. So that's what we've got to worry about. Big rocks, like I said, if you're not timing you aren't sprinting. Drills don't make you faster. Don't worry about sprint drills, speed drills. Think of them as warm-up. Don't think of them as things that make you faster. And this is the part that's going to piss off the football crowd, but it is true. The weight room is highly overrated for speed. If we look, and I've said this numerous times, we can see lots of great sprinters. If you go and watch Usain Bolt's strength training, if you bother to go and Google it, looks like something we did in high school in the 70s. But he's the fastest man in the world. The reason what we see is these fast people run fast. And in spite of whatever else we might look at and think, hey, their strength training program isn't great, this isn't great, this isn't great, none of that matters. What matters is that they're running sprints. So weight room, I mean, there's other reasons, getting bigger, armor building, there's reasons to be in the weight room, but don't try to convince yourself that you get faster in the weight room, because you don't. And I made that mistake. I made it for a long time. As we said, overrated, but not unnecessary. But as far as we're concerned, in the weight room, unilateral work is where it's at. I always say you only run on one leg at a time. If you look at football, everything about football is unilateral. Even line play, it's stepping. If you watch offensive line coaches or defensive line coaches teach, all they're talking about are steps, 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 right? So get strong on one leg. Forget about the big, the dinosaur heavy back squat idea. This is Casey Fitzgerald, who played at Boston College and then is now playing in the American Hockey League. Obviously a football player. I mean, a hockey player, not a football player. But what we're trying to push our guys towards is that they're somewhere between 50 and 100% of body weight as an external load. So in this case, we've got a 30-pound chain, 40-pound sandbag. He's at 70. He's still a little under. These guys did in the weeks that followed, were up in the 100-pound range, 90-pound range, which was 50% of external load. Why do we do that? Really simple. This Alex Natera, and you can zoom in on this if you get a chance, but basically this was it was called load comparison in single and double leg movements. And it was actually done as a presentation at the UK Strength and Conditioning Association. And what this guy, Alex Natera, did, which is freaking brilliant, is he was really trying to figure out, if you did unilateral exercises, how much weight were you losing and how did that relate to squatting? And so I'll give you the long and short of it. The short part is in the brilliant. He took this, if you look at down here in 1955, he looked at a study that looked at pilots to see how much weight was in the seat when they were in the airplane. And what he realized was that 68% of your weight was in the seat. So basically, the way this graph is broken down, 68% of your weight is torso, head, arms, which means 32% is legs, which means 16% is each leg, which means if I stand on one leg, the total load of my torso and my opposite leg is basically like 80, I think it was 84% of body weight. And then what they did is they compared, conventional back squats to these unilateral versions, single leg squats. And what they realized is that when somebody could handle 50% of their body weight, they were a double body weight squatter. So we look at this and think this is way more specific to running, to football, to everything that we're going to do, and it's much safer. So I won't beat that to death too much. But strength training versus sprint training, 2 hours versus 2 minutes. Think about that. Our real sprint training, the actual time sprints that we do, 3 to 4 sprints twice a week takes us about 2 to 3 minutes to do. So it's not a huge time commitment after you get warmed up. And as we said, the weight room may not be as big a part of the puzzle as we think, but this doesn't mean don't lift. Strength and power will make a big difference for beginners with rate of force development, strength to body weight ratio. Strength development will make a big difference in injury prevention. Strength development will help you, what my friend Dan John likes to call armor building, getting bigger. Those are all things that will be helped by the weight room, but it's not necessarily what's going to make you faster, particularly after the beginner level. I said, I think in American football, we get lost in the weight room. We allocate a huge amount of time and energy to the weight room. We've been ingrained with this idea. And again, I'm a strength coach. I'm a weight room guy, right? But with this idea that the weight room's important, the weight room's important. You got to get in the weight room. I just don't know if that's as true as we would have liked it to be. Because really, if the weight room was the answer, there'd be a lot more power lifters and Olympic lifters in the Olympics and other events, and there aren't. In fact, it's very rare that a power lifter or an Olympic weightlifter has been in the Olympics in any other event. Probably the big exception would be pushers in bobsled. But in general, it doesn't necessarily make you more athletic or faster. And for us up here in the North, we just, hunker down in the weight room, right? And, what we used to do, I always remember college football, you'd go someplace warm to find speed guys, right? And I don't think we need to do that. We don't need to run track necessarily, but we need to run fast. We need to make running fast part of our program. And we also need to understand that speeds, people say, what about cleans? What about snatches? Nothing in weightlifting comes close to sprinting. We need to see sprinting as a training tool, not as a training test. This is what's really, really important. Sprinting as a training tool, not as a training test. Because if we look at things like, a power snatch is 1.5 meters a second, a power clean is 1.25 meters a second. Those are fast lifts, right? Average sprinters move 8 meters a second. So when we watch that sprinter moving 8 meters a second, they're doing something 4 to 5 times the fastest thing they could possibly do in the weight room. So the impact on their muscular system, their nervous system is significantly higher. This is probably a landmark study, and we won't spend a lot of time talking about studies, but what was called the weigh-in study: faster top running speeds are achieved with greater ground forces and not more rapid leg movements. This is important to understand. It's not about, it's not about quick feet. It's not about ladders. It's about putting force into the ground. And yes, strength training, at least in beginners, is going to be part of the force into the ground equation. But what happened with this study is that sorry, I'm going to go back. It gave strength coaches more of a license to lift. Strength coaches looked and said, it's all about force into the ground. So it only matters how strong you are. And that's not true. It's as not true as if we go back to this one, the quick feet stuff, people, we got quick feet. No, this guy's got quick feet, right? The Lord of the Dance has really quick feet. He doesn't even go anywhere. Okay. It's not about quick feet. It's about force into the ground, but it is that specific force into the ground that really is best trained by sprinting. So part 2, drills don't make you fast. And you can read this article. Daniel Kalick wrote this article. You can go to this link. Our running drills useless. So you can just type in our running drills useless, Kalick, simply faster. It'll come up. But one of the things that he says is too much time with cute looking drills, not enough time sprinting. Use sprint drills as warm-ups. This is the thing that I would tell you. Use sprint drills as warm-ups. You can do high knees and butt kicks and whatever else you want, whatever sprint drills you like, but realize they are drills. They are warm-ups. They are not speed work. You will not get faster by doing drills. You will get faster by sprinting, by running timed sprints. And this is why, in some ways, we shouldn't listen to track coaches. One reason we shouldn't listen to track coaches, we don't have all day. And I just said, all the guys I cited in my thank yous are all track coaches almost. But we don't have all day. If you look at in my situation as a strength and conditioning coach working in the private sector, I've got about 5 minutes for speed development. I don't have an hour for track practice. And for us, speed isn't our only concern. Again, we need strength training. We need it for injury prevention. We need it for size development, armor building. We need those things. So we need to find ways to be efficient. The other thing from the standpoint of track coaches is working with responders can make the wrong stuff turn out right. What do I mean by responders? Well, think about the guys who go out for track and sprint are fast. No one comes out and says, hey, I'm really slow. I want to run the 55 or the 100, right? The people that are doing that are responders. They're people that are fast. They've got great neural systems. But the difference is strength coaches sometimes completely ignore track coaches and say things like the football speed thing, or they don't change direction, or all they got to do is run straight ahead. That's all true. But trust me, when you look at the statistics, the people that can run straight ahead the best tend to be very good at football. This is another thing, in terms of teaching speed and drills and all these things. And I love it. It's from a book called Most Likely to Succeed, but they call it the bike analogy, right? And it says it would start by students learning all the parts of the bike. I'm not sure how useful that information has ever been to me in my bike riding history, but from there they might learn the history of bikes, learn the physics of how the gears and chain work to propel the bike. They might watch other people riding a bike and test the effectiveness of various bikes. In no part of this learning would anyone actually be riding a bike. That's sometimes the drill situation in track. We've got people out there and they're skipping and they're ankling and they're doing high knees. They're doing all kinds of track drills, but they're not running sprints. If you want to get faster, you have got to first know how fast you are. Think about that. If some kid says to you, Coach, I want to get faster. Well, how do you know how fast he is, right? You got to time him. You got to have some place to start. And my feeling is if you start with a 40, one, you probably get guys hurt right out of the gate. And then you probably become like I did. You become a little averse to sprinting. Like, oh, if I sprint, guys are going to get hurt. I can remember as a college strength coach, I hated timing day in the fall, actually really in the late summer, because I just stood there almost with my eyes closed as guys ran thinking, please don't pull a hamstring. Please don't pull a hamstring. Because these guys weren't ready for 100% effort at 40 yards. The nice thing about sprinting, though, is that running sprints makes you better at running sprints. It's what they call self-organization in the social sciences, a process where some form of overall order arises from local interactions between parts of an initially disordered system. The process can be spontaneous when sufficient energy is available, not needing control by any external agent. It is often triggered by seemingly random fluctuations, amplified by positive feedback. So what does this mean? I'll tell you what it means. What it means is that you get better at sprinting by sprinting. It is self-organized. You're taking parts of an initially disordered system. You're amplifying them by positive feedback, the improvement in time. Kids figure out that was faster. What did I do differently? That was slower. What did I do differently? It is literally timing is a self-organization, self-teaching setup. And this is really interesting. So watch these guys. The reason I slow-mo them, so these are my son and his friends. At this time, I think they're all probably 14 going on 15 in these videos. But the interesting thing is if we look at the lower body mechanics of all of them, they're all pretty good. They get full hip extension. They step up over the knee as they cross through, right? The heel comes up pretty close to the butt. And what you're going to see, every kid that goes through is going to look reasonably similar. And yes, arms aren't good. All hockey players, all lacrosse players. I don't worry about arms. I don't worry about arms with football players. I don't worry about arms with anybody because, we're not running track. But it's self-organizing. These guys have all gotten to be better sprinters because they run timed sprints twice a week, year round. We do it in season. These guys are in hockey season right now. We're still running timed sprints. They were in lacrosse season. We're still running timed sprints. This is my son. This kid has gone from slow to fast. When we started out doing this, he ran a 1.87 10-yard dash. That is extremely slow. Within a couple of months, he was down to 1.47. If you think about everybody knows speed here. Everybody understands sort of 40 time. 0.4 seconds over 10 yards. That equates to about a 0.8 difference in his 40. So he might have gone at that stage from like a 6 flat to a 5.2, which is really big difference, obviously, right? So time sprinting is both a method of self-organization and a powerful training stimulus. Sprinting is a powerful plyometric that is performed at ever-increasing speeds. It's a powerful tool, not a test. Time sprinting is also a lesson in self-organization. Kids think, okay, that didn't work. And then they try something different. Generally, they push the ground harder. That's our biggest cue. Push the ground, push the ground, push the ground. So what would you do? Now, I know because part of the issue, speed training without timers, what are you going to do? I'm going to tell you that we're going to break a few rules because here's Tony Holler's rules. 2 to 3 reps only. That's really important. 2 to 3 reps. No races. Really important. Timed versus competitive. Internal versus external. Tony likes to say getting beat is not a performance enhancer. And I agree with him. Showing kids how slow they are. I want kids to be getting faster. I also want to be tracking sprint momentum so that I can explain to them if they're not getting faster, that they are getting more powerful. This is another rule that I like, the Charlie Francis rule. If you get a PR, you're done. Really tough for us to enforce. Our kids, the one thing about our kids is they love time sprinting. They would do it all day. They would do it almost as as many reps as we allow them to do. We will go to 4 reps. We will not go beyond 4. We will try to stay in the 2 to 3 rep range. Here's my rules. Rule 1, once you understand the rules, you can break them, but only if necessary. P.S. We may break the no races rule, and I'll explain to you why as we move forward, right? Rule 2, never sprint without proper warm-up. We foam roll, we stretch, we do dynamic warm-up, we do plyos, we do our med ball throws, then we sprint. So we never sprint cold. Also, rule 3, never, never, never sprint if you are sore in the hamstrings or hip flexors. And again, very anti-football, right? Letting kids opt out. You got to be tough. No, I tell kids all the time, I don't care. You're not showing me how tough you are by getting hurt. There's nothing performance enhancing about being injured either. So if you're sore today, you do not run sprints. You do not run time sprints. You have to say this over and over again, because it's amazing how many times you'll see a kid, and we have had very few real muscle pulls, but sometimes you'll see a kid start to be like, oh, that didn't feel good. And I'm like, why did you do it? And they were like, well, I knew I was a little sore, but I wanted to try. Encourage them to be intelligent about this. And then actually rule 3, which is really rule 4, progression. We're going to show you how to progress this thing so that it works, right? And it keeps coming back to this idea, the progression thing. Do the best you can with what you have, where you are, which is crazy. It's a Maya Angelou quote, but it really applies to this speed development process. Because this is the one thing to understand too, when we think about speed, and Ken Clark really helped me to understand this. Top speed changes everything, because one thing you realize is no one can maintain top speed all the time, right? But if we get a guy who can go from, let's just say, 16 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour, right? Then that guy who can run 20 miles an hour at 80% runs 16 miles an hour. The guy who can run 16 miles an hour at 80% runs 14 miles an hour. So this is what they call the speed reserve concept. The faster guy runs faster at lower effort levels. That's really, really important, particularly from a conditioning standpoint. So injuries. Did fear of injury scare us into doing too little? It certainly did for me, right? One thing we do know, injuries increase after 20 yards. This is why we're talking about progression. We'll talk you through the progression in a minute, but injuries increase after 20 yards. And this is the study. I said I wouldn't talk about too many studies, but this is another one where they showed that risk of injury was 2.7 times higher when they went above 20. But this is the flip side. Sprinting, a potential vaccine for hamstring injuries. This is a J.B. Marin article where Marin talks about the idea that sprinting might be like the vaccine to prevent hamstring injuries, that regular sprinting will keep your athletes from pulling hamstrings. So we need to go from one side of the coin where we're afraid to time guys because we're afraid they're going to get hurt, to realizing that timing them is probably the best way to protect them from getting hurt. And this is another study. I won't even worry about that. But so what do we do? This is what's important, right? Part 5, what we do. What would we do if we had 24 minutes twice a week for warm-up speed work and plyos, right? We'd go through our warm-up drills, all our speed development type drills, right? We would go through some sort of what we call a jump, throw, run circuit. So if you look at what we do, we're set up here, because of COVID, we're set up in lanes. We've got our hurdle set up so our guys can throw medicine balls against these walls. They can do their jumps, and they can do their warm-up runs, because there are going to be warm-up runs, right? That's Connor Strahan, who played at BC. Most of the rest of these guys, this is Casey Fitzgerald, also played at BC. These guys, Matt Philippe, played at Northeastern. These guys are all hockey guys except for Strahan. But the point is, all this stuff is warm-up before we sprint. Dana Trevigno, who was on our national team, just a different plyo demonstration. But the important thing to understand is that we get an extensive warm-up. We do things that are really highly neural. These are some of our pro baseball guys. But the idea is that we're throwing medicine balls explosively. We're doing explosive jumps. And then we're also going to run some acceleration ladder type sprints. So this Craig Breslow used to play for the Red Sox, but a wicket type idea. Then and only then are we ready to sprint. And then what we come down to is what I call a flying 10 system. So a flying 10 is just timing a 10-yard sprint with some type of run up. What we do, because we're always timing the same segment, it's really easy to see if guys are getting faster. In phase one, so phase one lasts 3 weeks, we use a 5-yard fly-in. So the kids run 15 yards. They're timed in the last 10 of that 15-yard sprint. Right? Phase two, 10-yard fly-in. So now they're running 20 yards. We're timing the 10. They're automatically, the nice thing about this, it reinforces they automatically get faster. We increase the fly. When we go from 5-yard fly to 10-yard fly, they drop by 0.1 right off the bat. Boom. Phase 3 and 4, 15-yard fly in, 20-yard fly in if you have the distance. The idea is still 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks. This is a 12-week progression. At the end of a 12-week progression, you're actually running 30 yards. You've surpassed that 20 area that we're worried about. But it's important, 2 to 3 trials a day, 2 days a week. Always giving the opt-out instructions, right? If you're sore, we don't want you to time today. If you feel anything on any sprint, you're done for the day. Make them understand that you're better off sprinting the next time than getting hurt this time. It's really important. So phase 1, 2 days a week, 3 times a week, 5-yard fly into a 10-yard timed interval. Phase 2, 2 times a week for 3 weeks, 10-yard fly in into a 10-yard timed interval. It's always a 10-yard timed interval, phase 3 and 4, 15-yard, 20-yard. It's really simple. The good thing is you're increasing the total distance sprinted over time. 3-point starts, don't use them. And again, people like, what are you talking about, right? I'm talking about there's only basically one group of people that uses a 3-point stance. And it's not the kind you use in sprinting. No one uses the 4-point stance that you use in sprinting. So we've just gone to standing starts with everybody. It's much easier. It's much simpler. We're not teaching start. We don't have to worry about hand time. If you want your linemen, your 3-point and 4-point stance guys to take their fly in out of a stance, go ahead. But just realize that it's going to change the times and it's going to make a difference. So again, like I said, Tony's rules, 3 to 4 reps, no races. Timing versus competitive. Competitive is like external variable, another person they're trying to beat. We don't want that person in the equation. But as we said, if you don't have a timer, you got to break the rule because you want 100% effort. So if I don't have a timer, I'm going to try to get guys paired up, only 2 guys that I think are very similar speed, and we're going to follow the same progression. So we're going to go back to here. We're going to do everything exactly the same. Flying 10 with a 5-yard fly-in. So we're still going to have that 10 marked off. Basically, so here we're going 15, 20, 25, 30 over the course of 12 weeks. And it will be man against man, which I don't want to do. I don't like to do, but if you don't have a timer, you need to elicit that 100% effort. And that is another way to do it. So what I would tell you, though, is be really careful in phase 1. I might not even have them race in phase 1. I might just have them, do it. And you can hand time. It's going to be really inaccurate. And just throw the times away. But if you pull the stopwatch out, kids may run faster. So here's another look at the progression, right? 3 to 4 reps twice a week. 90 to 120 yards in that first phase, 120 to 160 in phase 2, 150 to 200 in phase 3. And then what we do actually, I'm sorry, this says phase 3 down the bottom, but it's phase 4. In phase 4, when we're using 20-yard flies, sometimes we'll do a ladder and we'll give them a 5-yard fly, a 10-yard fly, a 15-yard fly, and a 20-yard fly. That'll be our 4 sprints. And so only the last one will be a 20-yard fly. So it's a little bit different. So comparison, because this is what you're seeing. If you're following this stuff on the internet, you need to know the fly-in. We want apples to apples comparison. Whenever somebody posts a time, I'm always like, what was the fly-in? Because if we look at this, what's fast? With a 15-yard fly-in, 20 miles an hour is fast. So if we look at 20 miles an hour as a 1.02, if you get kids that are running under 1.1, with 15 and 20-yard fly-ins, you get kids that are pretty fast. If you get kids, that we've got our top guys, and they may show up in this next slide. We started having guys at 20-yard fly drop under 0.1, but these were, most of them were NHL level guys or AHL level guys that were they're the best hockey players in the New England area, and they would tend to be in that sub 1 point, 0.99, 0.98 kind of area. That's pretty fast. This is a helpful chart. Joe Stokowski is this guy's name. He's at, I think it's Pepperell High School in Georgia. But, if you start looking, to realize how fast somebody is, for someone to even be a 4.5 with a 10-yard fly, they need to run a 1.06 in the 20 to 30 segment. So a 20-yard fly in 0.96. So our fastest hockey guys tend to be 4.5, but this goes back to that early thing, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. In the NFL combine, 21 guys since 1999 in 4.3 or less. So there's a lot of fiction associated with timing. And that's why I love the electronic timer for that reason too. The electronic timer brings everybody back to reality. And this is just another look at, sort of, at what guys will hit from a mile per hour standpoint, what their flight 10 would be. So somebody, who can run 18 miles an hour is going to run like a 1.13, is going to be about a 5.240. Someone who can run 19 miles an hour is going to be about a 1.07 flight 10, is going to be about a 5.140. Someone who can run, 1.02 is going to be about a 4.9 guy, is going to be about 20 miles per hour. So this is just to give you some ideas for comparison. So here's the last question. Can it be this simple? Yes, it can absolutely be this simple. Run sprints, time sprints, 3 to 4 sprints twice a week, timed, keeping it to some version of the fly 10. It can absolutely be that simple. What I would just encourage you to do, try it. Start timing your kids in fly 10s. You will see that I'm correct, because it goes back to this Occam's razor idea, right? The simple solution is often the best solution. The simplest solution is this idea of doing the best you can with what you have where you are. I don't care if you're in a hallway. I don't care if you're in a gym. Wherever you got to do it, find a place to time. And again, these are my son and his friends. Again, they're a little bit older, but now, we're outside. 15-yard fly 10s. Here's some advice. Again, this is Tony Hall. Keep your sprint practice ridiculously brief. Time your sprinters in short sprints. Record the sprints, rank the sprints, publish the times. Don't sprint more than 2 times a week. Put this up on your wall. That's easy to remember. And as I said here, do the best you can with what you have where you are. Briefly about conditioning. I think conditioning is sport's biggest time waster. Don't spend less time worrying about conditioning than you do right now. Spend more time worrying about speed, and you'll be happier, particularly if you have kids that play other sports. Just things to think about: a football play lasts 5 seconds. So, how long should the longest conditioning drill last? I mean, it's different. A 300-yard shuttle is 12 times the length of the average football play. It's different. We get a lot of hockey players, but football has a very long off season with no opportunity to play the game. That makes it pretty unique, which means you may need to do some conditioning, but don't kill kids with conditioning. Make them faster. This is from Buddy Morris, who's the Arizona Cardinal strength and conditioning coach. But I won't worry about the science part right here. But if you look at down here, average number of plays per game, 75, average series per game, 15, average plays per series, 5, average time per play, 4.8 seconds, average time per play on special teams, 7.6 seconds, average rest time between plays, 34.5 seconds, average time between offensive and defensive series, 6 to 7 minutes. So when you start thinking about conditioning, think about this and about your conditioning being a lot more specific. I won't even worry about that. So conclusion: you do not have a speed development program if you're not timing your athlete. Your best indicator of speed improvement will be changing that 10-yard fly. Drills are great for warm up, but probably don't make you faster. The weight room is essential, but probably doesn't improve speed past the beginner level. More is just more. obviously I don't have time to take questions. If you have questions, my email, I didn't put it on here, mboyle, MBOYLE 1959, 1959, the year of my birth, at AOL.com. AOL is code for old. mboyle1959 at AOL.com. You can email me. Strengthcoach.com. It's a membership-based website. Feel free to join. Ask any question that you want. So hopefully we can help you with some of that stuff. The end. Stop share. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope we can finish communicating. So I'm gonna hit stop record. Thanks, guys.